The date is April 25th, 2021, and the time is 1:51 p.m. Currently, there are 31,795,248 cases of COVID-19 in the United States and 568,237 deaths. In Wisconsin, there are currently 594,283 cases and 6,757 deaths. At the current moment, the United States has a vaccination total of 27.5% of the total population. So for my interviewee, what is your name? And do you mind sharing any demographic information for the current study?
Okay, my name is Tamara Harris, and I'm 63 years old and married with 7 children between my husband and myself. And the ages range from 44 to 19. And my husband is 72, and we live in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin.
All right. And what are some primary things that you do on a day-to-day basis?
My husband and I are retired, so on a day-to-day basis, I will typically go to the Y and either swim or do a water exercise class. We'll walk in the park when the weather is good. I cook and clean, do the usual household chores. Craft-wise, I enjoy crocheting, so I'm in the middle of crocheting afghans for all of the grandkids. And also do puzzles, and then we'll watch television or a movie.
And you said that you live in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Would you care to clarify what it's like living there?
You mean before COVID or after COVID?
Whatever you wish to say.
Okay. It's a medium-sized community of about 13,000 people. It has tends to be pretty Republican. But it's also a close-knit community, and there's typically businesses that we like, coffee shops, and there's grocery stores and in our downtown area. Otherwise, it's just kind of calm. There's one high school that's very active, and prior to retiring and the youngest graduating, was very involved in the band program and volunteering.
Now, would you say that this community is very, you said they were very tight knit, so is this community very, like during the pandemic, have they been kind of keeping that tight knit regarding like the businesses and the schools?
It's kind of, it's separated more, and more to the people who are very serious about controlling the pandemic and taking all the precautions versus people who don't think that we need to take the precautions. So it's more divided than it ever has been.
And would you mind clarifying if there's any particular categories for the division?
The division is mainly that, like I said, the people who think that everything should be open and we shouldn't take any precautions, versus those who think that we need to take precautions to prevent it from getting any worse. And that started at the very beginning of it, when we started shutting down, or like wearing masks. Like, you've got half of the people that refuse to wear masks and the other half that do it very consistently.
Now, on the topic of the pandemic, when the news of COVID-19 first came to Chippewa Falls, did you have any particular thoughts regarding it?
When it first got here, I don't think anybody really understood how serious it was going to get or how big it was going to get. it was all, at the beginning, it was on the other side of the world. It was in China. And the first of the biggest news programs was about the cruise ship that had sick people on it and nobody would let it dock. And then it spread then Italy was very affected. And so that was in the news. And then the first time it was in the news for the United States, well, it was all the way over in Washington State. And so I don't think anybody in the Midwest or in our small community really thought it was going to get as bad as it did.
And did any of your thoughts kind of become changed once the pandemic spread to the Midwest and the Chippewa Valley?
Because of our age, because of my husband's prior health issues, and because of how our adult children are spread out, we were more concerned about not getting sick and not getting it. So we followed the procedures very carefully, and we were always very careful about staying inside. When we first were supposed to stay at home, we were very good at staying inside and ordering our groceries online and just picking them up. So yes, we were very careful about it at the beginning, because we were afraid that, if we got it, we were going to get very sick. And at the beginning, it was, if people got sick, they died, because then it got to New York City, and then everybody was, all we heard all the time was how many people were dying in New York City and such. So we took it very seriously.
And as you mentioned, a lot of your family is very spread out. So how has the pandemic affected any sort of relationships between you and the other family members that it sounds like you've kind of protected yourselves against, especially at the beginning of this pandemic?
Well, not only were we protective of ourselves, but our adult children are very protective of their parents. We have two kids that live in Chicago with their families. One daughter lives with her family in Minneapolis. There's one in Augusta. There's one in Warrens, who's currently in the military. And then there's one here that lives in Chippewa Falls. And so, especially the ones from outside of Chippewa Falls, they were all very protective of us. So we've kind of, we haven't grown apart, because we've talked to them on the telephone and stuff, but we haven't actually seen them at all. And the youngest grandchild was born in May, so he's coming up on his birthday, and we've only seen him once. And so that's kind of hard to not to see people. And like my brother and sister live in Black River Falls, and I haven't actually seen them for about 18 months now.
That sounds like a very difficult time. Have you had any sort of plans kind of going into, with the vaccination becoming more widespread, regarding any sort of potential changes or potential plans to kind of reconnect and more than just be on telephone calls?
We plan on connecting with the family down in Black River Falls tentatively on Memorial Day weekend, because of their age, they've also been vaccinated. Now we've been vaccinated. We'll probably still have a picnic or dinner outside versus like inside. So that's planned. I have seen the daughter that lives in Minneapolis, but I had to quarantine for 10 days beforehand, and then quarantine after I got back. And that meant that the college age daughter couldn't come home for 2 weeks because of so that we could stay quarantined. So over the summer, we plan on getting more reconnected with them.
And as far as your college age daughter goes, does she come home often, or like what's your routine with connecting with her?
The college daughter comes home usually every, probably 3 weekends a month, you know, at least to stay connected. And so that work good. Her campus is testing the kids every week until they're vaccinated. And after they're vaccinated, fully vaccinated, so 2 weeks after their last dose, then they no longer have to get weekly tests.
And how far away is your college-age daughter compared to your other children?
College-age daughter is at the university in Eau Claire, so she's only 12 miles away. One family lives here in Chippewa Falls, so they're close. The next closest one is in Augusta. So that's like 40 miles away.
And as far as any sort of changed relationships, because of course you have mentioned that your relationships and how you communicate with your family has been altered due to the pandemic, but has any of your connections with your friends or any other community members been changed to this extent?
It's become all virtual and all online, because we've not been, I got together with 2 girlfriends last fall, and we had picnic in the park in October, which was it was a little bit chilly, but since then we've not gotten together at all because it's all virtual. And one of my best buds has a son-in-law who is currently fighting cancer, so she's very careful about being around anyone at all. So, and then although I do go to exercise class, so I see a small group of women, and we do exercise class in the YMCA swimming pool. So you can talk in person, but we're still socially distanced in a competition size swimming pool with lots of chlorine.
So have you participated in like any other activities that have been altered to the extent, like for instance, that your exercise course has been altered due to CDC guidelines?
We have not gone, like, typically I'd go out for coffee with friends, like, you know, once a week or so. And that we haven't been able to do, especially at the beginning when everything was closed down. And then it was that you could get things to go, but it was in the winter, so you can't really, there's no place to go if you take it to go. Now, since everything's been open up with limited capacity, I've gotten together with friends a couple of times in coffee shops, and visited a friend, you know, another friend that lives alone. I've gotten together with her a couple of times in her garage, so that we could spread out more than we can in her house.
So with the relaxing measures and the changing measures taken to prevent the severity of COVID-19, your methods of meeting up with friends and all that stuff has been slowly but surely kind of coming back to somewhat of what the quote unquote normal was before the pandemic began.
Yes, it has become more normal.
And regarding the outbreak, you said that many of your friends and people that your friends know are high risk. So in addition, have you known anybody who has gotten sick or has passed away due to COVID-19 complications?
There was a friend of mine's mother-in-law who was sick and had it, and she went into the hospital in October and came out like after the first of the year. So she was in the hospital like 3 months. And now she has survived. She's got lung damage and she's not recovered at all. She hasn't fully recovered yet all these months later. There was a teacher that worked at our high school that was 57 years old, had just retired in June. Very healthy. Skied the Birkebeiner, which is a cross-country ski race. It's 52 miles long. So very healthy. And he died. He died last fall. Actually pretty quickly from it. And he wasn't in the hospital. He was only in the hospital 2 or 3 weeks, and he died. Another retired teacher passed away from it last winter. Actually, there were 2 other retired teachers that passed away last winter from COVID complications. So yeah, we've known people. No one in our family has passed away from it. Some of them have gotten it, but they had mild cases. One son-in-law here in Chippewa Falls had it, and he had a mild case of pneumonia, and he was sick for 2 or 3 weeks, but he never had to go into the hospital. The 7th grade granddaughter had it, but her only symptoms were just a cold, that like common cold symptoms. So she really wasn't sick. Their mother didn't get that. My daughter did not get it because she works in healthcare. So she was one of the first ones that's vaccinated. And she has always had full PPE uniforms and stuff. So she's always been protected at work. So otherwise, no, like I said, no one in our family had it, just friends and coworkers.
And of course, it can be very scary when anyone gets sick, whether they get to the point that they need to be hospitalized or simply quarantined. But has any of these cases between the familial relationships in which weren't very severe and the tragic deaths of your coworkers, how exactly have they affected any of your attitudes or responses to the sickness?
Well, when the first coworkers died last fall, there wasn't that many cases of it, but the cases that were there were very serious. And then in December is when we had a large spike, and the daughter who works in healthcare was working 60 to 70 hours a week doing overtime shifts at the hospital. And sometimes what she did on her overtime shift was connect families with their loved ones on Zoom so that they could say goodbye, because they weren't going to make it. They weren't going to live. Sometimes it was just sitting with people while they died so that they weren't alone, since their families couldn't be there. So I think all of that made us much more careful and much more consistent about wearing our masks when we did go out, and going out a lot less than being more at home, staying home more, so that we didn't get sick or that no one else got sick.
And that must have been a very big mental toll on your daughter.
Yes, it was. She got very, very tired.
And has anybody else that you've known have you seen any sort of changes regarding mental health amidst all the stresses of the pandemic?
I think mental health wise, I think people, the ones that I hang around where friends and family were more lonesome. So where we feel more isolated. I was glad that we had a very mild winter, because had we had a severe winter where we couldn't even go outside to go for a walk or something like that, I think it would have been worse. There are a lot more people that I know and that the people that I know that are dealing with a lot more anxiety, a lot of depression, because we're all very nervous and very afraid of not only us getting sick, but loved ones getting sick or friends getting sick and dying. So we're kind of all more feeling our mortality a little bit more.
And if you don't mind sharing, how would you say that your mental health has been affected in similar ways to how your friends have been affected?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. I mean, we're lonesome. We miss our kids. We miss our grandchildren. I miss seeing my brother and my sister. We feel very disconnected because we had, as good as Christmas and Thanksgiving were with just the two of us and our college age daughter, and then talking to the others on the phone. As good as that was, it was still completely non-traditional and just three of us. I did cook totally non-traditional foods because I didn't want to have a big turkey like a traditional Thanksgiving when it was totally different. So we fixed totally different foods than what I typically do on the holidays. And so that worked out good.
So it sounds like your typical holidays that you would celebrate with more than just your direct family was altered in more ways than simply just not having other family visiting or visiting other family.
That is correct. Like I said, we just did non-traditional food and different cookies than we usually bake, and we had to mail packages. A couple of them we met halfway between Minneapolis and us to swap presents out, but we stayed outside because that was in December when everybody's cases were spiking. So you can't, even though I got to see them, we didn't get to hug or anything like that. So that was kind of hard.
And this was all mostly during the spike of cases?
Yes, because around here they spiked in kind of November. December was really bad, and then January we're also very high.
And now lately, the CDC and local health departments have been showing that statistics since the spike have been decreasing slightly with the effects with the production of the vaccines being released to different sectors of the public. Now, have you yourself been vaccinated?
Yes, I had both. I had the Pfizer vaccine. So yes, we're all vaccinated.
And was there any sort of thought process or any sort of concern when considering whether or not you would choose to get the vaccine?
I was mildly concerned because it did come around faster than a lot of other vaccines, but one of the adult children is friends with immunologists who helped develop the vaccines. And as he said, that they've been working on a COVID vaccine for SARS and for some of the other COVID infections. And so they kind of tweaked it to develop this vaccine. And he was confident in it and confident in the safety of it. And so knowing that made us more confident, as well as my own personal doctor, who was very confident in the safety of the vaccine. And she said she was going to get it, and without any hesitation. So in talking to the doctors that I trust and people I trust, then it was easier to just say, yeah, we're going to get this because we just want to be normal again.
So with being presented this internal information from people developing the vaccine and having this background information that the vaccine wasn't simply made from scratch once the pandemic began, kind of um, helped you to come to your decision and be more comfortable with having the vaccine?
Yes, that is correct.
And for the process of getting the vaccine with the very large rollout, what would you say your experience was with getting the vaccine?
We had to wait, we had to kind of look around to places that we could get it. My husband got his because they were vaccinating healthcare workers at one of the local clinics, and they had several extra doses at the end of one of the days, that if they didn't use them that day, then they would go to waste. And so then the daughter who works in healthcare called and basically said, well, if you can get here in the next 10 minutes, you can get your shot. And so he started when the healthcare workers started. And I got mine about, must have been about 6 weeks later that I got mine. And it was a matter of calling all of the places that had it to see who had the vaccine available. And I was eligible because I volunteer at Feed My People. And so through my volunteer work, I'm with the public more. And so I was in one of the first phases of the rollout and could get it, so.
And so did you get your vaccine, being that you work with the public? How easy was it to find the information for when you would be eligible as soon as possible compared to other members of your age group?
When finding out when I was eligible wasn't hard. Finding the vaccine and who had it was a little bit more difficult, because I ended up having to go to a clinic that's separate from the ones that I typically go to in order to get it.
And how long would you say it took for approximately from when you found out when your particular group would be eligible compared to when you were able to get the appointments to receive the vaccine, would you say?
Took me about 2 weeks to find, of calling each day the different places, and then to find the vaccine. So about 2 weeks.
And would you say this is similar to others you know that received the vaccine?
Yes, that's similar to what is in some areas. I have some friends down in Black River Falls that had, he is currently recovering from prostate cancer, and he had a very difficult time getting a vaccine, even with his health and his immune system being compromised. The major clinic down in La Crosse didn't have it. The local clinic didn't have it. He was on a waiting list for the county, and he ended up getting his from the Ho-Chunk tribe at their health center, because as part of their community outreach and their community activism, they invited everyone in the community to come out and have vaccines when they had it available.
And would you say that due to this particular member being from outside of the Chippewa Valley, would you say that where he's from and in other counties of family members that live outside of the Chippewa Valley, would you say that any of them have had any more difficult or easier of a time in receiving the vaccine based on their different locations?
They seem to have more problem getting it than what we did up here. It took them longer, and it took them more phone calls and that kind of stuff.
And as difficult as this is, a lot of the information regarding the pandemic and the vaccines have been broadcasted through many different media networks. And that's how much of the public has been receiving their information. Would you care to say how and where, like which media you have received a lot of your information from?
Get a lot of it from the local television stations. Is the best place, as well as on social media. I follow the county health services in both Eau Claire and Chippewa County. And so that keeps you up to date. As far as national, I tend to watch both the conservative and the more liberal media stations, and then so that it's a more balanced viewpoint on COVID as well as everything else.
Mhm. And I apologize if you hear any clicking on the ground. My dog has currently decided to join me in this interview. But with that media, being that media during the 21st century has been very much more advanced, but also can be very biased depending on the source. Would you say that your media has changed at all as far as where you've gotten your information from within this past year?
I don't think it's changed as where I've got it from. I've gotten more careful about if there's an article that's somebody's talking about on the news, or it comes up on one of the CNN or Fox or one of the local Facebook pages. I'm very much more focused on fact checking everything before believing it or before sharing it with anyone or talking about it with anyone, so that it's more accurate, so to try to stop the flow of false information.
So your methods of receiving information has become more than just simply looking at an article or hearing a news source, and you have done more personal research before you tend to take that information to heart then?
Correct, yeah.
And regarding that, as pertaining to different biases and the way that different media portrays different aspects of the pandemic, would you say that there's anything in particular that you believe that the media, that is essential that the media is or isn't sharing for whatever reason that you believe should be shared?
I don't think that they're holding anything back. I think that I think the biggest thing is that the stuff that they are sharing isn't always consistent. Like one day they'll say that it's under control and cases are going down, but then the next day there'll be stories about, oh my, it's spiking again and all this kind of stuff, and you have to lock down, and so the message isn't consistent. And I think that had it been more consistent at the beginning, I think more people would have followed along and done what needed to be done, so it'd be controlled faster.
So would you say that this particular lack of consistency has created instability and like an uneasy way of following the information for the community?
Yes, it has. It's by being not consistent, it's created doubt. And that doubt in many cases, unfortunately, turns into conspiracy theories. And then those get all blown out of proportion. And so you lose just the factual basis of what we need to make decisions on.
And how
And they also lose trust when they're not consistent, when people start doubting.
And how severely would you say that these conspiracy theories and how this lack of consistency, how much and like how severe would you say it has affected the attitudes of your community and yourself towards the pandemic?
I think that in many ways, that's what's caused the divisiveness and the rantings and the and the bad media or the bad social media posts, like when people attack each other. And I think that that's all of those outside factors from the inconsistencies, and then the conspiracy theories have all added to that. With the and it's become political, and instead of staying a health issue, it became a political issue, or has become a political issue. It still is. And that created more divides than there should be.
And would you say that these divides, because you referenced them before when talking about your community in Chippewa Falls, would you say that these divides have been here and in your community for the entirety of the pandemic? And have they been there even before the pandemic?
They've always been here. They were always there, but before the pandemic, and like 5 years ago, people could talk about their political differences, and they could have respectful conversations, like, this is what I think, and this is what I think, and talk and discuss it. Whereas now, if you disagree with someone, it's become more anger. There's more anger and more negative energy and more negativity. And so it's much more of a deep divide.
So you would say the pandemic has almost fueled more of a flame to create more of a rift, presenting these differences and these divides in a much more extensive and obvious light.
Yes, exactly.
And with your community, and the pandemic has definitely changed what we believe as normal and how different people interact with each other. So for your personal experience, is there any way that you believe that the pandemic has significantly transformed like how you think about your family and like friends in your community?
I think it's just highlighted how much we need social interaction with our friends and our family, and even our church, because like church can't meet in person. You meet in a parking lot, and then the service comes over the radio, and it's really, really highlighted how much we just need human interaction, something more than just online or on the phone or on text. We actually need to be with other people because we're just social people.
And now if you'll excuse me for a moment, my dog needs to go outside quick. Sorry about that. And is there any particular ways that your attitudes have changed due to all of these divides and these changes that you have previously described?
My attitude has kind of changed in that, like I said, I fact check everything, but it's also changed to where when I do go into a store or go out, you try to be more kind. You say thank you, and that kind of stuff. And I also make it a point to not argue with people. And if someone chooses to be negative, then I choose to walk away from it versus have a disagreement.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to let the dog back in. Come on, bud. Thank you for your patience. But so would you say that these different ways of thinking are going to expand beyond when the pandemic has ended for you personally?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's kind of shown us how much we need each other and how much we need our family. So I think once the pandemic is past, you know, I want to be more connected with people on a more regular basis and their families and that kind of stuff, just to strengthen the ties more, to reconnect and then make those connections stronger.
And are there any other points that about your life during the pandemic that you would wish to highlight for as we come to the end of this interview?
I think it's, you know, one good thing that's kind of come out of it is I think most people have gotten more creative. A lot of people that I've talked to are cooking more because they're not, you know, the restaurants were closed. So people have had to learn how to cook. So you cook more. I know I've cooked many more different things. It also has brought out our talents and our of like I've retaken up crocheting, which I enjoy doing and I always have, but it's become more therapeutic and it's just a matter of it's a feeling of accomplishment by, you know, every Afghan that I make, every blanket that I make, it's like an accomplishment so that the days aren't the same day by day. Also reading more. And so, yeah, I think some positive things have come out of it, but I still want to be back to normal and, you know, celebrate life with family and friends.
And I'm sure that many people in Chippewa Falls have the same sort of attitudes as far as wanting to go back to normal as has been displayed a lot on the media.
Exactly.
Now, with that, I'm going to thank you for choosing to be a part of this interview and to submit your life story to the archive to help extend the knowledge of the records of how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected your particular community and yourself.
Well, thank you. I like that it's being written down and recorded. So.
Right, thank you.